Okay, I'm really hoping that this is working. We are running into a few technical difficulties here, so if I come up and I'm okay, I'm really hoping that this is finally working now. I was running into some technical difficulties a little bit earlier, getting everything up and running with Facebook Live, and unfortunately, that just happens sometimes. The internet is a tricky thing, and from time to time, it just decides that it doesn't want to work. But I think we're here. I think we're in a good place. So I'm very excited to be doing my first of what will be several live events and live readings for my upcoming book, which releases on Tuesday, February 18th, The Dressmakers of London. This book is my first book that will be coming out in paperback first, which is very exciting because that means it's going to get into the hands of a lot of readers, hopefully very quickly, and you'll be able to pick it up without having to wait for that paperback release. The Dressmakers of London is, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it before jumping in and doing some live reading stuff. The Dressmakers of London is a real, what I kind of think of as a Julia Kelly book. So it's about two sisters, estranged sisters, who inherit their mother's dress shop. So one sister named Izzy has worked at this dress shop for years and years. Another sister, Sylvia, got out as soon as she could when she got married to a man who was several class levels higher than she was. So she married up. And in this book, basically, these two sisters are at opposite ends of their lives. They're not speaking to each other. They're estranged. They inherit this dress shop jointly called Mrs. Shelton's Fashions. Mrs. Shelton was her with their mother, and then they have to figure out how to run this shop together, not just as businesswomen, but also because Izzy, the youngest sister who worked at the dress shop, gets sent off to war. So Sylvia has to step in and fill that role. This book was a real joy to write for a couple of reasons. One of which is that I've never written about sisters before. For some reason, even though I am a sister, even though I adore my little sister, who's not so little, even though I have this really strong relationship with my sister, for some reason I just had never written about sisters before. I'd never explored that dynamic between two women. So this is my opportunity to talk about sisterhood, to talk about what that looks like, all the different forms that it can take. And this is also my first really heavily epistolary novel. So in this book, you get a lot of letters back and forth between Izzy and Sylvia as they try to figure out how Sylvia is going to run this dress shop she hasn't stepped foot in for more than a decade, while Izzy, her sister, is off serving as a WAF in the barrage balloon units. So they exchange a lot of letters, and they sort of, through those letters, start to repair their relationship and start to come to have a better understanding of one another. So I really loved writing this book. It was so satisfying and so much fun once it's really locked into place, and I really felt like I got to know all these characters. And I just think it's going to be such a joy to see this get into the hands of readers. So while I'm waiting to see if there are any questions, any comments, I am going to run a sort of Q&A session on release day for this book. So that's on Tuesday. There is an event. If you go to my Facebook page, you can go ahead and find that event link. This will be live as well as pre-recorded. After the fact, it will be an archive video from that live recording. But if you are curious about this book, I really strongly encourage you to go to that Q&A. I can do a couple of question and answers here, but I really like to keep this mostly to a live reading. So this is my welcome to my little library here and my bookshelves as we do a little sort of literary salon. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and crack this book open. And I was originally thinking that I would go ahead and, oh, Dee has asked, is this a historical fiction? Yes, this is World War II set, London. It takes place predominantly in 1942, and it focuses a lot on what was going on domestically with clothing rationing and fashion on the ration, as people might say. So I'm going to go ahead and crack this open. I was originally just going to read you chapters 1 and 2, which is your introductions to Izzy and Sylvia. I think we can dive into a little bit more action than that and give you a bit of a sense of, I love those setup and getting to know characters chapters, but I think I'm actually going to jump a little bit ahead. I used to attend a reading, a regular reading, a live reading in New York City called Lady Jane's Salon. And often authors would break up and sort of read different chunks of their book to give you a flavor for what you could expect when you were picking up their book. So I think I'm going to do that today with this one. I am going to really quickly take a drink of water because nobody wants me coughing through this whole thing. I don't have my usual Diet Coke with me. People who've been watching for a very long time and also have seen a lot of old Askin authors will see that there's lots of Diet Coke and lots of cups of tea in those. Um, right, so I think I'm going to go ahead and start with chapter 3 of The Dressmakers of London. So, what you need to know at the beginning of this book, before what's happened before we jump in here, is that Izzy is the younger of the two sisters. So we have Izzy Shelton and Sylvia, who is married to a man named Hugh, or Hugo. And the reason that that's important is Izzy is still at the dress shop. She has been working hard. She is a naturally talented seamstress, and she's sort of the heir apparent to her mother, who has a very strong control over the dress shop. Mrs. Shelton, her mother Molly, basically opened the store out of necessity years ago, and the shop has really been the thing that allowed these three women, to survive after their father died. And you find out the circumstances around that during the book. And so Izzy has this natural interest in clothes. She's very talented seamstress, and now she really is interested in design. So if you think about it, it takes place in 1942. Her mother has owned this shop for a couple of decades, and Izzy feels like the clothes that her mother's designing and selling for her very loyal but shrinking clothing customer base, because rationing has started to really affect how much people can buy, how much people can actually afford every year, not just in money but in clothing coupons as well. So Izzy is starting to feel like the whole place needs a bit of a refresh, and she needs to start incorporating a bit more modernity into some of the clothes that Mrs. Shelton's Fashions offers. So Izzy has a sketchbook. She's always sketching, she's always designing, but she has not yet convinced her mother that her designs are worth including in the shop's offering. Meanwhile, Sylvia is living a very different life. So again, Sylvia is the elder sister, very beautiful, and was not naturally very talented as a seamstress. And there is a sort of antagonism between Sylvia and her mother. And we don't really understand it at first, although I do reveal that later in the book. But really, what's going on with Sylvia is that she she has a very complicated relationship with some of the key figures in this book, and she has chosen, for her own reasons, to basically throw her lot in with this man who is a Harley Street doctor. He is a member of, members clubs. He went to a very exclusive school. He has a very sort of highbrow family. He's not a member of the aristocracy, but he's a member of that sort of upper crust. And so Sylvia has leaps and bounds, um, you know, run up the social ladder. And part of her role, she feels, is to maintain a level of social status that reflects where she has come. So she sits on committee meetings for charities, and she very much has made her whole life about her supporting her husband's career, supporting her husband's ambitions. And so Sylvia lives this very different life than Izzy does, and doesn't have any relationship with Izzy, doesn't have any relationship with the dress shop. In fact, she hasn't stepped foot in the dress shop since the day that she left home to get married. So that is the point at which we start. We start the book. And yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. So we're going to start with chapter 3, and start with Izzy's perspective. This is told between Izzy and Sylvia's POVs. Tuesdays were always a nightmare, but this one really was the limit. The telephone had rung at 8:30 in the morning, and Izzy had only just managed to race down the stairs half-dressed in time to catch it. A chipper man on the other end told her that not only would the cloth Mum had ordered the previous week be delayed that morning because of an issue with the lorry delivering it, it would be short 10 yards of tweed and 5 of cotton lawn. "I do have orders I'm meant to be fulfilling," she snapped down the telephone in an uncharacteristic show of spirit. "Don't we all, miss?" asked the man with a laugh. "Well, when can I expect the driver this morning?" she asked, fumbling with the buttons of her brown cardigan. "He'll show up when he shows up, won't he?" the man replied. The whole thing had thrown her morning off because instead of heading back upstairs to pull on her shoes and finish pinning up her hair, she'd gone straight to the appointment book and tried to figure out what fittings they might need to move around due to the missing materials. Throughout it all, she couldn't help but feel the situation spiraling out of control. This was a far cry from what she wanted to be doing, sketching designs and making beautiful clothes for women who could appreciate a touch of modernity in their wardrobes. But as Mum liked to remind her, it was part of running a dress shop, so Izzy bit her lip, put her head down, and carried on, because to show reluctance or resentment might undo all of her good work to prove to Mum she was capable of managing Mrs. Shelton's fashions. When she'd finally wrestled her morning under control again, the fabric delivery showed up just before 10 o'clock, the 10 o'clock opening, a blessing, but it was all wrong, a curse. There was no tweed at all, but boiled wool, and all in the wrong colors. Instead of cotton lawn, there were yards of what was a kind of heavy canvas commonly used for kit bags. It had taken the driver half an hour and 2 calls to his depot on the shop's telephone to work out that they had assigned the wrong order to their address. When finally he realized that Mrs. Shelton's order was mislabeled in the very back of the lorry, it was nearly 11 and Izzy was already exhausted. She was just thinking how much she would like to lie down and have a nap when a tap came upon her shoulder. She turned to see Miss Reed, concern clear on her face. Miss Reed is the second in command to Izzy and Izzy's mom. She is the head seamstress at Mrs. Shelton's Fashions. "Have you seen your mother this morning?" Miss Reed asked. Lizzie looked around as though Mum would somehow materialize in front of them. "Not yet." She paused. "That's unlike her." "Why don't you look in on her?" asked Miss Reed with an unusual display of consideration. "It's very kind of you, thank you," said Izzy gratefully. She left the delivery driver with Miss Reed, said a silent prayer that the man would survive his encounter with the scowling seamstress, and mounted the stairs to the flat. As soon as she was through the front door, she paused to listen for the sound of Mum moving about. All was silent. She really did have to speak to Mum about this. This was the 4th time in 2 weeks that Izzy had had to wake her mother up to start the working day. If Mum really was so run down, perhaps it was time to ask Dr. Morton to call on them. Maybe he could suggest something that would help bring Mum's energy back. Not that she looked forward to revisiting the old argument with Mum about whether it was worth paying the doctor's fee for the house call, only to be told that Mum needed rest and good meat for dinner at least once a week. Izzy knocked on her mother's door and waited for a response. She knocked again. Still nothing. "Mum," she called out, "it's past opening time. It's time to start the day." When there was still no response, she tried again. "I could use some help taming Miss Reed. She's in a mood this morning." Still nothing. Izzy twisted the knob and pushed open the bedroom door. It was still and cool in the room, and the only light coming from the open door and a tiny crack in the blackout curtains that Mum drew every night. She could see dust particles dancing in the sunlight that lanced across the room and fell across Mum's chest. "Mummy?" A tiny flame of dread flickered to life in her stomach. "Mummy, it's time to wake up." Forcing herself to creep into the room, she reached the side of her mother's bed. Mum looked peaceful, young even, without the lines of stress that too often etched her brow. Slowly she extended her hand until her fingers grazed the shoulder of Mum's white flannel nightdress. Her mum didn't move. Izzy backed away a step, her eyes fixed on her mother's face. She could see now the faint tinge of blue of her mother's lips, the waxy quality of her skin. Dumbly she backed out of the room and retreated down the stairs to the shop. A part of her mind registered the sound of the delivery man moving about in the inventory closet, and Miss Reed berating him for bumping into a wall, but it felt as though someone had thrown a length of gossamer chiffon over everything, dulling it. She reached for the telephone and asked to be connected to Dr. Morton's surgery. When he finally picked up the phone, she said, "Dr. Morton, this is Isabel Shelton." "Miss Shelton, what can I do for you today?" asked the avuncular man. "It's my mother." "I'm sorry to hear that. Is she ill? Several of my patients have the flu that's going around," he said. "She's dead, Dr. Morton," she said numbly. There was a moment's silence on the line, and then the man cleared his throat. "I'm so very sorry, Miss Shelton. I'll be there at once." It wasn't until the tinny sound of the operator coming back and asking if she still wanted to keep the line open that Izzy remembered to hang up the telephone. "Good evening, Mrs. Atkinson," said Sylvia as she closed the flat door behind her. "Good evening, madam. May I take those books from you?" asked the housekeeper. Sylvia handed the two books to Miss Atkinson to allow herself the chance to unbutton her coat. She spent the afternoon at the London Library, happy in the reading room's happy in one of the reading room's deep armchairs. Hugo used to tease her that, despite the furs and jewelry he'd given her, it was the subscription to the members' library that she treasured the most, and he wasn't wrong. She read voraciously, a habit she'd acquired after coming across an article in a magazine that said a woman could never truly be accomplished unless she was also well read. And she loved nothing more than to wander the stacks, never knowing who she might run into. Once, before the war, she had been carrying a handful of dust and had walked straight into the book's author, Evelyn Waugh, as he browsed the books on religion. It had been a thrilling brush with literary notoriety, although when she told Hugo about it, he laughed and told her she was adorable for caring, because everyone knew that Waugh was a sharp-tongued snob. "Are there any messages?" she asked Mrs. Atkinson, trading her books for the coat. "No, but the afternoon post came," said the housekeeper. "I thought you might like to read it in the sitting room." "Thank you," she said, mortified at how grateful she was because answering letters would give her something to do once Mrs. Atkinson left for the evening, other than wandering around the empty flat like a married alter ego of Miss Havisham, despairing after her husband's affair. "Supper will be ready in an hour. Would you care for a cocktail before?" asked Mrs. Atkinson. "A gimlet, please." In the sitting room, she set the books down on the walnut coffee table and picked up the stack of posts Mrs. Atkinson had gathered on the ridiculous silver tray Hugo insisted they use. There were several invitations to tea, two personal, one to raise funds for evacuated orphans, as well as a letter from her friend Helen, who had decamped to America with her Bostonian husband when the war started. She immediately recognized a thick, buff-colored envelope addressed to her as being from Hugo's mother, no doubt wondering if Sylvia had any news of her son. When she saw the last envelope at the bottom of the pile, her hand froze. It had been years since she'd seen it, but she would know Izzy's handwriting anywhere. Keeping her eyes fixed on the address, she set down the rest of the post on the sofa next to her and then reached for her golden letter opener. Her heart pounded as she slid the sharp point under the envelope's flap and in one precise move slid open the top. 18th November, 1941. Dear Sylvia, Mum died suddenly this morning. Dr. Morton says that it was likely a heart condition and there was nothing that could have been done. She will be buried on Friday, 21st of November. Sincerely, Isabel Shelton. "Oh, poor Izzy," Sylvia murmured. Poor Izzy." She rose and went to the cream and gold telephone sitting on top of a small round table in the corner of the drawing room. She lifted the receiver and gave the operator the exchange for the shop. She could practically feel obligation oozing off the page of Izzy's note, almost as though her sister hadn't wanted to tell her, but some wisp of familial feeling had forced her to sit down and write. It was the same instinct that sent Sylvia's heart skipping with hope and dread in equal measure as the telephone rang. Finally the line connected, and she heard her sister say, "Mrs. Shelton's Fashions, this is Miss Shelton speaking." Izzy sounded wrung out. "Izzy, it's Sylvia." "Sylvia." Izzy's voice was flat. "What happened?" "It's all there. Were you the one to find her?" she asked. There was a sharp breath on the other line. "Yes. Oh, Izzy, I'm so sorry." She had been rising later and later. I thought it was just because she was exhausted. She had always stayed up late finishing orders because it's only Miss Reed and myself helping her, and well, you know how particular she could be about finishing. When she didn't come down yesterday morning, I went to wake her and... Izzy's voice cracked. She was gone. "Izzy, I'm so sorry," she whispered. She'd been so pale recently, but we all were, with the weather being what it was. But then she was out of breath sometimes, too. Didn't Dr. Morton say nothing could have been done?" she asked. "But I lived with her. I worked with her. We were around each other practically every second of the day. I knew something wasn't right. I wanted her to see the doctor, but she wouldn't hear of it," said Izzy, her voice rising. "Our mother could have a stubborn streak," she said gently. "I should have insisted," Izzy continued, as though she hadn't heard Sylvia. "If I had, maybe she would still be alive." "Don't blame yourself," said Sylvia. "What would you know about it?" Izzy snapped. "You haven't seen Mum in years." Sylvia pursed her lips tightly, fighting the instinct to hurl back a barb. Her sister didn't need that right now, and heaven knew it wouldn't help matters. "Why did you write to me rather than telephone?" she asked. "I would have come straight away." "I thought it was best," said Izzy. "Besides, I wasn't certain of your exchange." "It's been the same as it has since Hugo and I were married," she said. "I'd forgotten." A lie, she was certain of it, but now was not the time to press her sister. "Well, I telephoned you because I would like the details of the funeral arrangements," she said, taking up the silver pencil that lay next to the book she used for messages. "Why?" Isabel asked. "Because, Isabel," her voice hardened, "although you might find it hard to believe, I would like to attend my mother's funeral." There was a long pause on the line before Izzy finally said, "You made your choice, Sylvia. You aren't regretting it now, are you?" She closed her eyes. No, she didn't regret her choice. It was just that if she didn't attend her mother's funeral, she was certain that one day she would come to hate herself for it. "The details, please," she said. She could hear the reluctance in Izzy's voice as she related the funeral arrangements. There would be a service at St. Anne's, their old parish church, on Friday morning. The burial would take place just across Salisbury Road in the Paddington Old Cemetery. "Thank you," she said when her sister finished. "You don't have to do this, you know," said Izzy. "What do you mean? You haven't seen her in what has it been, 3 years?" It was more like 4. In a moment of guilt, Sylvia had decided her annual Christmas card was not enough. Knowing that, in a rare turn of events, she and Hugo would not be spending the Christmas season in Tunbridge Wells at his parents' home, she'd taken it upon herself to suggest her mother and Izzy come for Boxing Day lunch. She'd written the invitation and posted it before she could second guess her actions, risking Hugo's annoyance when she told him that, much to her surprise, her mother had accepted, making it clear her mother would be coming alone. The day had been a disaster from the start. Her mother had sat on the very edge of the drawing room sofa, handbag held on her lap like a shield. Sylvia's hopes for a pleasant afternoon dipped even further as she watched her mother peer around the flat with a mixture of judgment and resentment. At the lunch she'd taken pains to cook herself, no one spoke. When at last Sylvia had risen to clear the dishes of the final course away, Hugo had retreated to his study, leaving her mother alone. It had fallen to Sylvia to see her mother to a cab, and she'd sighed a breath of relief as it drove away. That day, she'd resolved never to expose either of them to the discomfort of another holiday spent together. Now excuse me. Now she stared at the details of the funeral arrangements, wondering what wretched daughter would ever think that about her own mother. "I'll be at the funeral service and the burial," she said, drawing back her shoulders. "Not Hugo?" asked her sister, the sarcasm coming clearly across the crackling line. "He's a surgeon lieutenant commander in the Royal Navy Medical Service," she said shortly. "He's been serving on ships since leaving basic training, Izzy, so he's indisposed." Her sister sniffed, but apparently even Izzy couldn't find fault at Hugo's service. "Fine." The line went dead, Izzy's unvarnished disapproval reverberating through Sylvia's chest. So, that sets up a bit of Sylvia and Izzy. It's always funny when you plan out readings and things like that, you realize that it takes a lot longer to read out loud than it does to actually sit down and read yourself. So I think I'm going to go ahead and stop there. But suffice it to say, when Izzy and Sylvia sit down and learn about the details of their mother's will, they find out that their mother did not, as they suspected, leave the dress shop outright to Izzy, who had been working so hard there, but she left it jointly to Sylvia and to Izzy, and they don't understand why. It creates a rift between them again, but now they're joined together, and Izzy sets about trying to figure out how she could possibly buy her sister out of the dress shop, after Sylvia very quickly offers to sell her half to Izzy. But then, of course, the conscription of women comes in, and Izzy, who is younger than Sylvia, falls within the category of women who have to join active service. And so there you get the setup of the Dressmakers of London. There you get the establishment of two sisters who are estranged, forced to figure things out together. We have a couple of quick questions. So thank you for everybody who said it was a read for them and they're excited about it. Yes, sure, and lots of unresolved issues. But one of the things that I love about writing historical fiction and writing about women, and specifically writing about women's relationships, is writing about the complexity of those relationships. especially at points in time in people's lives where they are questioning some of the things that they've done in the past. They are questioning their own feelings about sort of what they've known to be the truth for years and years because their situation has changed. So Sylvia has a lot of growing to do. Izzy has a lot of growing to do. And hopefully you see that through their letters back and forth throughout this book. And then their own personal growth as well. So it's a partial epistolary novel and partial, standard prose that you would see in most historical fiction books. Um, Dee asks, did Sylvia have her mother make her wedding dress? I don't want to give any spoilers. That is a point of some contention in the book, what ends up happening around Sylvia's wedding, and you find out more and more about the wedding, about the choices that Sylvia made, about why Sylvia made those choices, and it does start to become clear that that is some of why there is this rift. It's not the entire reason behind why there's a rift in this family, but there is some good reason that this wedding came to be. Some of the problems around this wedding came about because of what happened with Sylvia very early on in her engagement and then her marriage to Hugo. Her sister Izzy's nickname for Hugo is Horrible Hugo. So you can read it and decide just how horrible Hugo is or whether Izzy is being ridiculous or not. So yeah, so I think for now I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. Again, I have an event. In fact, while I'm chatting with you, I'm going to see if Facebook will let me actually grab the link to that event so I can share that with you and drop it in the comments. I think it will, which is always very exciting. Whenever Facebook decides to cooperate with me, it is really a good day. So live Q&A, I'm dropping this link in the comments right now so you guys can actually have a direct link to that and follow along and ask plenty more questions if you want to on release day. I know everybody will have gotten a chance to get a hold of the book. Pre-orders will have come out at that point. So if you do want to go ahead and pre-order, from your local bookstore or from, wherever you do get your books, if you have an ebook or an audiobook, you will get it immediately on the day. If you have a print copy, your mileage may vary on shipping and everything, or, click and collect type of pickup status. But it's very exciting to be doing a Q&A. This is my first historical fiction book in a couple of years, so it's nice to be back. It's nice to be, writing about these women again. And so I hope you'll show up to that. Please RSVP so you get a notification. And I will also, of course, post on my page as well. But I'm really thrilled to see what people think of my Dressmakers of London. And hopefully you enjoy the relationship between Izzy and Sylvia as much as I did writing it. I really, really loved writing about sisters. I loved getting, I loved getting a oh, Sharon, you're asking me questions right as I'm wrapping up. I'm going to go ahead and answer why did you pick the year you did for the setting of the story. I am going to answer that in the question and answer session on Tuesday. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want to talk a little bit more about sort of the context that this book is in, and what you can expect when you take a look at that. So not just about fashion and rationing, but also about women's conscription and about what was going on in the war during that time. So it's end of 1941, early 1942 that this book takes place. So yes, please RSVP for that so you can take a look at those questions. I hope you had a great time. I really loved getting a chance to read for you guys. If you are watching this on an archive video and are watching it back not live, thank you so much. And again, leave any comments, questions in the chat under this post, and I will go ahead and try my best to get those things answered in the Q&A on Tuesday. So thank you guys. Please, if you are considering pre-ordering, please do pre-order the book or go out and purchase the book if you're seeing this when it's actually out. And I can't wait to hear what you guys all think of it.